It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. The Prime Minister under official investigation over whether he failed to declare a financial interest which could benefit his family. Rishi Sunak's wife holds shares in a childcare company which could be boosted by the latest budget. Downing Street says it has been transparently declared. Also tonight, the competition to Vladimir Putin caged in Russia. The British passport-holding activist sentenced to 25 years. Body cameras for installers and a ban on forcing prepayment meters on the very elderly. The industry action to be announced tomorrow. Rupert Murdoch's Fox News, accused of spreading false claims about Donald Trump's election defeat, prepares to face a US court.
Banai Brinkenog?
Banai
Enog.
What's in a name? We hear the new Welsh identity for the Brecon Beacons. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's in our press preview from 10:30. Hello there, good evening. The Prime Minister's wealth is no secret, neither is his wife's. But tonight, Rishi Sunak is being investigated by Parliament's Standards Commissioner over whether he properly declared an interest which could have financially benefited her. Akshata Murthy owns shares in a childcare agency which could have made money from last month's budget, according to a Downing Street source. Rishi Sunak, though, didn't mention that shareholding when questioned by MPs. Number 10 says the interest was transparently declared. Our political editor, Beth Rigby, has this report.
His morning began in North London talking about maths.
We simply cannot allow poor numeracy to cost our economy tens of billions a year.
But now the PM facing questions about whether his own declarations add up.
Do you have any questions on things that are not related to maths?
Back in Westminster, they had plenty. Today, the Parliamentary Standards Watchdog announcing a probe into the Prime Minister over whether he breached rules when declaring his links to a childcare firm that his wife invests in. When asked about it in Parliament just weeks ago...
And there's nothing the Prime Minister wishes to declare in respect of that?
No, I mean, all my disclosures are declared in the normal way.
The PM not disclosing to MPs that his wife held shares in Koru Kids when they quizzed him about increased funding for childcare from which that company could benefit. But he had declared the interest to the Cabinet Office as required, a point he later clarified in a letter to the committee. Rishi Sunak said, "I note that there has been some media coverage relating to the minority stake my wife has in relation to the company Koru Kids. I was being asked questions by the committee in my capacity as PM. I would like to clarify for the parliamentary record that this interest has rightly been declared to the Cabinet Office. But the question is whether the PM should have told MPs when asked. The Code of Conduct states that members must always be open and frank in declaring any relevant interest in any proceeding of the House or its committees."
Will the Minister set out why she considered it necessary to incentivise childminders to sign up with agencies, and what conversations she and the Secretary of State had with the Prime Minister and the agency in which his wife is a shareholder prior to the budget?
I know that the Number 10 team are collaborating with the Commissioner to establish facts and show that everything has been transparently declared.
Number 10 say that there's no case to answer, that the Prime Minister did declare his wife's financial interests in the correct manner to the Cabinet Office and are perplexed by this probe. But it is nevertheless uncomfortable for a Prime Minister to be under investigation when he promised on the steps of Downing Street but months ago a government of integrity, professionalism and accountability. And it gives his political opponents an opportunity to accuse him of dodging scrutiny just weeks away from a set of critical local elections. A PM who wanted to show voters he was a break from the past, but his wife's wealth again becoming an issue. The question is whether the public will care. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, as Beth said, what the Prime Minister wanted to talk about today was extending maths provision to all school children, right through to 18. What teachers and students wanted to talk to us about today, though, was solving the school strikes and how to find more staff to fulfil his pledge. Becky Johnson reports from Birmingham.
And then you're going to do 4 times the X and 4 times the 10.
If you add 2 more years of compulsory maths after GCSEs, it'll equal a nation with better numeracy skills, according to the Prime Minister. As head of maths at this Birmingham secondary, Amy O'Driscoll doesn't disagree, but she does question the timing, with strikes, pay and funding disputes currently the main issues facing schools.
At this present time, I think, maybe it is that should be maybe further down the line for discussion when there is such a big crisis at the moment within the teaching profession.
What should be the focus of the government then?
I think definitely the retention crisis in teaching as well, and then the fair pay.
And until those concerns are resolved, there are doubts over whether the plans could work. There is already a chronic shortage of maths teachers, and with many schools struggling to recruit as it is, some question who will teach all this additional maths. The Prime Minister accepted it'll take time to train more teachers up, but says his plan is about tackling what he describes as an anti-maths mindset.
So my campaign to transform our national approach to maths is not some nice to have. It's about changing how we value maths in our country and changing the way our education system works to deliver it, so that all our children get these vital skills for life.
What do you notice about this? What can we do to this?
It wouldn't mean everyone has to do maths A-level, and the details still need to be worked out. But rather than worrying about what they'll be studying next year, these pupils are more concerned about strikes affecting their exams.
I could be missing out on a lot of learning time there, which obviously might mess up my GCSEs.
I feel like there's more important issues than to be making students do just extra 2 years of maths, like the strikes and just everything else that's going on.
By moving the focus onto maths, the government risks appearing to be out of step with what pupils, parents and teachers want to be talking about. Becky Johnson, Sky News, Birmingham.
A friend of the Russian-British opposition activist jailed for 25 years after criticising the war in Ukraine has told Sky News that she fears he will die in prison. Vladimir Kara-Murza has already survived being poisoned twice. The British government said it's looking at extending sanctions against those involved as a result. Our international correspondent John Sparks reports.
He's smart and articulate, an outspoken critic of the war in Ukraine, and in the eyes of the authorities, an enemy of the state. Vladimir Kara-Murza was arrested on charges of treason and spreading disinformation. But the 41-year-old knew no mercy would be offered here at his sentencing. His lawyer looked sad, but her client seemed bemused as the judge said he'd spend 25 years in prison. A sentence of unprecedented severity given to a man for speaking his own mind.
This is not Russia's war. This is yet another military adventure by the unaccountable, unelected, authoritarian, and frankly, increasingly deranged dictator in the Kremlin by the name of Vladimir Putin.
Here, Kara-Murza speaks to Sky News just after Russia launched its invasion. A committed Democrat, he was prepared to criticize the regime at a time when tens of thousands of Russians had decided to flee. But the activist, who also holds British nationality, was aware of the possible consequences.
I think the best thing this regime would like for us to do is to give up and run away. And we're not going to give them that pleasure.
We met him in 2016 as he entered a slate of candidates in that year's parliamentary election. It wasn't easy. At a party event, we saw the security services sneaking aboard the boat used for the campaign launch. The following year, he was poisoned for the second time and almost lost his life. He blames the security service.
I'm really worried about his health because he survived after 2 attempts of poisoning, and his health is weak, and this prison will kill him.
Outside court, Kara Mirzer's lawyer said his spirit remains undiminished. When he heard the sentence, 25 years, he said, "I realized I was doing everything right." The UK's ambassador said she was shocked by the sentence. And she called for his immediate release. Basic human rights have evaporated in Putin's Russia. There is no room now to challenge the man in charge. John Sparks, Sky News.
The energy regulator Ofgem will announce that suppliers in England, Wales and Scotland have agreed a new code of conduct on fitting prepayment meters. Forcibly installing them has been on hold since February after the underhand tactics used by some firms were revealed. Emma Birchley is here with me. Emma, this has been hugely controversial. So what will the code of conduct actually say?
So it makes things very much more clear. There are allowed to be, or there must be, 10 attempts to contact a householder before one of these enforced installations can take place. There also has to be a welfare site visit. And whatever happens, no one over the age of 85 or someone terminally ill or people with certain health conditions can have this happen to them. Also, what must happen is that every agent that goes into a house will have to have some form of recording equipment, whether it's a body cam or some audio recording equipment. So that will provide some form of safety. And it follows what have been some incredibly high-profile cases of people having enforced warrants, people coming into their homes, agents, and forcing them to have these prepayment meters to claw back some of the debt that they got into in a time of a cost of living crisis. And it prompted criticism of the government, criticism of Ofgem, the regulator, and even a very public apology from one energy boss. Now, campaigners have welcomed it on one hand, but they say that obviously 85 is a very high bar to reach. And also there will be certain disabled groups who need electricity. They won't be covered. So there are some concerns, but what it does do is formalise the rules.
Emma, thank you. The gangland attack, which resulted in the murder of a man at a boxing weigh-in in Dublin, was like something from a film carried out by men dressed as a police SWAT team. Today, the most prominent suspect on trial, Gerry Hutch, was found not guilty. The feud that the killing caused went on to claim at least 18 more lives. Our Ireland correspondent Stephen Murphy reports.
Gerry Hutch walks free from court, acquitted of one of Ireland's most notorious murders.
Any reaction to the court's decision, Gerry? Gerry, what's your plan now? Are you going to stay in Ireland?
No reaction to the court's decision to clear him of the Regency Hotel murder. That killing was straight from a Hollywood movie, played out for real at a Dublin hotel. A hit team of assassins disguised as a SWAT team, carrying AK-47 assault rifles, stormed a boxing weigh-in event at the hotel in February 2016. Their target was Daniel Kinahan, named in Irish courts as the leader of the infamous Kinahan cartel. Two other assassins, one wearing a woman's wig, were already inside, hunting. An eyewitness remembers the panic that ensued.
As we were walking out the door, we heard a group of people coming out behind us, rushing out, and one person exclaimed, "It's all kicking off in there." And we heard chairs falling over, glass breaking, and presumed there's some kind of a melee breaking out. 3 men dressed in guarded tactical gear and carrying assault rifles emerged in the van and came towards us, and they were shouting at us, "Get the F out of here, get the F down." They were pointing their weapons at us. They were scanning the people we were walking out with, checking to see who was coming out, essentially.
The gunmen didn't find Daniel Kinahan, but they did corner one of his lieutenants, 33-year-old David Byrne. He was shot 6 times by 2 of the fake police officers, dying from catastrophic injuries. In August 2021, Gerry Hutch, known as the Monk, was arrested by police in Spain and extradited to Ireland, charged with Byrne's murder. 52 days of evidence were heard at the non-jury court. Today, the judges said they doubted the evidence of the key witness in the case, former Sinn Féin councillor Jonathan Dowd. It was fatal to the prosecution's case. Gerry Hutch was free to go. The murder dramatically escalated the Hutch-Kinahan feud, which went on to claim at least 18 lives. Nobody has been convicted, but the relatives of those victims are serving their own life sentence.
The Regency and what followed had a devastating impact on the people of the North Inner City. It's not going to be forgotten. Too many people are dead. Too many families have been affected by it. This is going to go on for generations.
The search for justice continues, but the monk has had his day in court and after a year and a half in custody is a free man once more. Stephen Murphy, Sky News in Dublin.
Sudan's de facto leader for the past 4 years has told Sky News that his troops will defeat the paramilitary group challenging the military for power. Abdel Fattah al-Burhan was speaking as civilians in the country's capital and other cities took shelter for a third day. The United Nations says at least 185 people are now known to have been killed. Our Africa correspondent, Yusra El-Bahir, has this report.
Violent clashes drove these students to take cover, now trapped for days. One of them shows us their shelter in a faculty basement. They have limited supplies and are unable to leave for help. A student has been killed and we can't move his corpse. Another student has a serious injury. The situation is dire and we need intervention as soon as possible. And as he calls for help, gunfire rings out. All across the capital, confrontations between the army and paramilitary rapid support forces have engulfed the city in smoke. The two strongest armed forces in the country, head to head. But days on, it's still unclear what gains have been made, as the battle for power spreads from the streets to social media. This state broadcast shared to the Armed Forces Facebook has soldiers yelling, "Where are the rapid support forces?" to the sound of victorious music. Videos uploaded by the rapid support forces showed their officer claiming control of the state broadcaster's offices and the state airport in the northern city of Merowe. We got on a call with the army chief and de facto head of state. Okay, the head of the army is currently calling us back. Will you go to the negotiation table for the stability of the country? It's possible, he says. If negotiations will restore the country and are fair, then it's possible. I ask him about the presidents who have offered to fly in to mediate talks. He says the current climate of clashes isn't suitable to welcome them. With a closed airspace, internationally led peace talks are currently off the table. For now, millions are trapped, waiting for a resolution that feels more distant than ever. Yusra El-Bahir, Sky News.
Play was stopped at the World Snooker Championship this evening after Just Stop Oil protesters vandalised one of the tables and tried to attach themselves to another. Robert Milkins and Joe Perry were playing their first-round match at the time of the incident, which saw a man climb onto the table and cover it in orange powder. A 30-year-old man and 52-year-old woman have been arrested on suspicion of criminal damage. Both are in police custody. There have been more protests in Paris tonight after the French President Emmanuel Macron addressed the country in a televised speech and said he understood the anger at his unpopular decision to raise the retirement age. Macron gave himself 100 days to heal the country following weeks of anger after signing into law his plans to increase the retirement age by 2 years to 64. He's now asked his government to open talks with unions on a range of issues. The launch of the biggest rocket in history, planned for today, has been postponed. SpaceX blamed a pressurization issue for the delay and said a minimum of 48 hours is required for another launch attempt. Starship, which was due to launch on top of the company's Super Heavy booster rocket, is a key part of plans to take astronauts back to the moon and on to Mars. Well, the claims were, according to one senior figure at America's Fox News, absurd, to Rupert Murdoch, damaging and crazy, but it didn't stop the news channel broadcasting false claims about election fraud after Donald Trump's defeat. That is the allegation made by a company whose voting machines were supposedly implicated. And tomorrow, its more than $1 billion lawsuit is due to be heard in court. Our US correspondent, Mark Stone, is in Delaware tonight. Mark.
Anna, I covered every twist and turn of the 2020 election, where those claims that it was stolen were first sown. Since then, I've spoken to so many people up and down the country who firmly believe that it was stolen, that Donald Trump, in fact, won. And for so many of them, their source, their trusted channel, was and is Fox News.
It is the story about America's most influential news network.
We don't know how many votes were stolen.
A story about anchors whose words are trusted by millions.
The company is called Dominion.
It's about a lie. A story about the 2020 election.
Dominion voting machines were used in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada.
In this Delaware courthouse over the next 5 weeks, a jury will hear claims that Fox News knowingly broadcast lies repeatedly. It's all about these voting machines used nationwide, which Donald Trump's team claimed had software inside which stole his votes and gave them to Biden, delivering him the presidency. There were news conferences, most notably this one, Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani.
And then you can also trace it with a very big spike in the vote count at exactly that time.
And at the heart of it all, the allegation that Fox parroted this conspiracy to protect its viewing figures and dupe its audience.
I'm not sure that I ever imagined it would be so dramatic and so pointed and so explicit. This is a huge deal for American politics and for American media and for Fox and for the Murdochs. It's potentially transformative.
Court documents reveal what the people at the top of Fox News were really thinking. There is no evidence of fraud, none. Fox's chief political correspondent Brett Baer said on November the 5th, 2020, 2 days after the election. Later the same month, the network's most high-profile anchor, Tucker Carlson, said, again privately, this software shit is absurd. And Rupert Murdoch, the owner of Fox News, after watching the now infamous press conference by Rudy Giuliani, where he alleged fraud by Dominion, Murdoch said, really crazy stuff and damaging. And other private messages suggest they did not want the truth to be on air. In response to a Fox reporter fact-checking the fraud claims, Carlson said in a private message to 2 other key anchors, please get her fired. It needs to stop immediately. It's measurably hurting the company. The stock price is down. The question for the jury, did Fox act with actual malice? Did they know they were broadcasting nonsense? The man at the very top, whose influence runs so deep, could be called to give evidence on day one.
Look, Anna, I think the reason this is quite so important is because it's hard to overstate just how much influence the cable news channels here in the United States have, both on the left and on the right of politics. They are so polarized and so hugely influential. I think that the defense of Fox Corporation will center around the fact that they believe these quotes that you heard there have been taken out of context and are cherry-picked. They are only part of the story, so Fox will claim. That, of course, is if it goes to trial. This time yesterday, there was the dramatic news from inside the court that the trial had been delayed by a day. It was supposed to be a day underway already, but it has been delayed. The reason for that, the speculation at least, is that Rupert Murdoch, probably up in New York, and his team are trying to settle out of court to prevent this 5-week trial from going ahead at all. We'll see whether that happens.
Indeed we will. Mark, thank you very much indeed for that. Now, for non-Welsh speakers, it is quite a tongue twister, the new name from today of the national park, formerly known as the Brecon Beacons. They are now Banau Brychanog, and I'm not the only person challenged by saying it, as Dan Whitehead has been finding out.
For hundreds of years, young and old have headed up Pen y Fan, the highest peak in South Wales. But from today, the park it calls home, the Brecon Beacons, is no more.
A new kind of national park. Not the Brecon Beacons National Park, though. Not anymore. No, this place has a new name now, or rather, an old one. Banau Brychanog.
Adopting its Welsh name, Banau Brychanog, comes 66 years after it was granted national park status.
I think it's really important to celebrate our culture, our heritage. As you know, as you mentioned, the name goes back to the roots of the Kinds and the Brechan. And Welsh language and culture is really, really important to us and to our visitors.
The name change is just one part of a new plan for the park to improve biodiversity and tackle the impacts of climate change. Promoting Welsh culture and language may be a big part of this rebrand, but for the walkers heading up Pen y Fan this afternoon, the new name is proving a bit of a mouthful. Can you pronounce it?
Oh, Banai Brincachinog?
Not bad, not bad.
The new Evie, have a go.
Banu.
I'm going to go with Banau Bryn Cainiog.
That's pretty close. That's pretty close. Yeah.
Banau Brych Enog.
Perfect.
Yeah.
But for the non-fluent in Welsh, fear not.
We're not saying everybody has to say Banau Brycheiniog. Hopefully they will, but Brecon Beacons will be used.
You won't get in trouble if you still say Brecon Beacons.
Absolutely not.
Dan Whitehead, Sky News in Banau Brycheiniog, South Wales.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview, including this story on the front page of The Eye. Their headline, Sunak under investigation by UK ethics watchdog over wife shares. Tonight, we'll be joined by The Guardian's deputy political editor, Jessica Elgott, and Harry Cole, the political editor at The Sun. Back in a moment.